Ooh. So Avril has asked whether she can record it. I'm not sure, Avril, that you can, but I tell you what, we are recording it. We will send out the recording to everyone who's come along today. So you will be able to access it later.
Yeah.
Hi, Avril, I can see your face. Brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to, first of all, I've got to talk about my blue hands, because my husband said to me, you're not going to be able to use your hands because everyone's going to see that they're blue. And the reason I have blue hands is my husband's fault. He's a handyman and he's got to do something. I'm not even sure what he's doing, but it's something very long that needs to be straight. So he's made himself a spirit level and used blue food colouring to put in it so that he can see the levels. And the food colouring is everywhere. It's on the dogs, it's over all of the kitchen, and we're all covered in it. So that's why I'm blue. Because I thought I can't sit on my hands. I'm not very good at sitting on my hands when I'm presenting. So that's why I've got blue hands. Okay, I think what would be really nice is to start with a little bit of interaction with everybody. It is really absolutely wonderful to see so many faces, and some of you I recognise. I think we're over 2 screens now, and some of you are completely new faces to me, which is lovely. And I guess I ought to introduce myself before we go any further. So some of you do know me, but my name is Laura. I'm one of the co-founders of Memory Matters Southwest, which is now 11 years old, an organisation that was set up to support people living with dementia in Cornwall and in Plymouth. We run various projects and a lot of training and support to other organisations and people who work self-employed as well, to work with people living with dementia. Our whole aim is to help people living with dementia to thrive in whatever way that may be. I've got a lot of experience in working with people with dementia, not only through Memory Matters, but as a mental health nurse prior to that, and also running cognitive stimulation therapy groups too. And we do a lot of the training around CST for people who want to provide CST for people living with dementia. So I'm going to, and also the lovely Shania, who's sort of sorting us out technically. If you, yeah, she's giving us a little wave there. But Shania is part of Memory Matters too, and actually she's my my right hand woman who sorts my brain out really and makes sure that everything works smoothly. So Shania is here if you've got any technical difficulties, if you've got any questions after this, if you've got any questions as well, just get hold of Shania, and we will put details in the chat in a bit as well. So let's start with a little bit of interaction in the chat. I want to know where you all are. I know that there's a fair few people from the wonderful part of England, Cornwall, which I'm also in. I'm in Lostwithiel. But I think we've got people from all over and maybe even international as well. So it would be really lovely to hear where you're all from. So in the chat, if you could just write your town that you're in, that would be great. And we'll have a little look. Bodmin, Fareham, Chudley, Launceston, Falmouth, Weybridge, St Tizzy. Whoa, we're going really fast now. Delabole, Scotland, how marvellous. All the way up there. And we've got United States as well. Oregon, fantastic. Hertfordshire. Yes, so lots and lots in Cornwall, which is wonderful, because I think that's because it was Tim Jones who's here somewhere. Give us a wave, Tim. I can see you, who mentioned in one of our meetings that it would be good to do a session on how to talk to somebody living with dementia so that they feel great and that you do too. And so that's where the idea came from, and here it is. And it seems to be an incredibly popular topic. So well done, Tim. Fantastic. Okay. I also want to know next what your relationship is with dementia, in terms of, are you loving someone living with dementia and caring for them? Or are you working? And when I say working, that might mean volunteering in a voluntary capacity as well. So I'm just going to ask those two questions. So if you're volunteering, I want you to write working. If you're looking after somebody because you're living with them, you love them, they're part of your family, then please put loving. So loving or working. Working, so lots of working. Loving and working. Loving and working, yeah. Working and have MCI. Working and friend with Lewy bodies dementia. Yeah, you know, the thing about dementia is it touches so many of us, doesn't it? And also it touches us in our different capacities too. So very often we are loving somebody living with dementia whilst we're also working in it too. But that really helps us because at the end we're going to be sharing some resources that may be useful, and I just wanted to make sure that we get that right in terms of what you need. So right, today we're going to talk about three key things really. We're going to talk about the foundations of having a good conversation with somebody living with dementia. Actually, we're going to have the foundations of having a good conversation, full stop, and then we'll add with people living with dementia. I'm also going to help you to have the best questions you could possibly have for good conversations with people with dementia up your sleeve. So we're going to have a look at how we are conditioned to have conversations, just the way that we've talked to people since we were children all the way up as we grow, and how we need to tweak that and change that to make conversations work better when we're talking to people living with dementia. And then finally, I'm going to help you to generate some new and exciting activities to help people be engaged in the work that you do or the caring that you do through activity as well. So hopefully all of that will be done in an hour. So we will finish at 7 o'clock sharp. So I'm going to start then with the foundations of a good conversation. So you don't need to take notes, but if you do want to, that's absolutely fine. But basically there's five things that we do. And Shania, I think what we'll probably be able to do after this is I'll do a bit of a pre-say of these things as well, so I can send that out with the video. So if you don't want to take notes and you just want to listen, then feel free to do that. So number one is about being present. And it seems so obvious, doesn't it, being present in a conversation, but we aren't always present. And I have to say myself, you know, I've got a busy family, and very often I get caught out with my 9-year-old who's been talking to me, and then she stops and asks me a question, and I realize I haven't really been listening. I've been making the right noises, but not necessarily been really listening, not being really present. And when we're really busy, and particularly when we're stressed, it's quite difficult to get present. We have to consciously do it. And I talk a lot about how important it is that we actually come back to breath, that we actually breathe. Very often we're sort of very shallow breathing, and we're not really, you know, we're bouncing from one thing to the other because we're busy. And sometimes just taking 3 breaths is enough for us to get present in the moment with the person that we're talking to. And I would suggest that that's a really good practice to do as we go into a conversation with somebody living with dementia. And it's something that I practice, and you may notice today that I speak quite fast because I try and get through as much information as I possibly can in a short amount of time. When I speak to somebody living with dementia, I have to purposely slow myself down, and I do that by getting back to breath. So this is going to sound hilarious, but there are many ways to breathe. So one of my top tips for breathing is box breathing. And this is something that Navy SEALs use before they go into combat, because what it does is it tells our brains that we are safe. And so what we do is we take a deep breath, and I'm going to draw a box now. So this is what we do. So we breathe in, and filling up our lungs as much as we possibly can, and we hold it, and we count to 4, and then we breathe out on the count 4, 2. So, and then we hold the breath out for 4. And this is where we draw along the bottom. And then we repeat it. So I'm just going to do it with you now. So hold. That was the out breath. Hold. And we can just repeat this as many times as you want to. If ever you're a bit stressed, it's a fantastic way of just completely calming our bodies. But also, it really grounds us and it gets us in the present moment. We spend a lot of time worrying about the future or worrying about the past. And we need to work hard to be in the moment. And so that's almost like the preparation even before you have a conversation. So be present. The next point I'm going to make is about listening. So often when we have a conversation with anybody, not just somebody with dementia, we're listening to what they say with the aim of what we're going to say next. So we're not really listening. We're listening to what the person is saying. We're hearing the words. And in our mind, we're thinking, oh, yes, I've got a story that I can add to that. Or, oh, yes, I must tell them about. And we sort of park these ideas. But actually, if we're really present, we just listen. And then when the person has finished talking, we'll then say what we might want to say or we might find is useful in the conversation. So actually, again, as crazy as it sounds, slowing this whole process down to the point of actually breathing and listening. What that does is when we're listened to, we become much more animated. When we're listened to, we feel so much more important. When we're listened to, we feel like we're part of something. And, you know, we can take that away when we talk to anybody, but when somebody is living with a dementia, very often they don't feel a part of something. And very often they don't feel involved in conversation, particularly if it's really fast and they can't keep up. Mm-hmm. And so they will tend to isolate themselves. So having that concentration just to listen, to actually listen to what the person's saying is sort of it's the second step. And then the next part is about going into that conversation with an intention. And your intention in that conversation is merely to understand what that person is saying. And sometimes, particularly in dementia, the words may not add up to what the person is actually wanting to say, or what the meaning is behind what they're saying to us. So going in with curiosity and care into the conversation is where we can start to really understand what the person is wanting to say to us, or the important part of that conversation. And the fourth thing is about looking for what matters. So it's kind of very similar, isn't it? So our intention is to understand, and we're looking for what matters to that person. So instead of we're going to look at some examples in a minute, but instead of having a conversation where somebody tells you, or you ask them, what did they do yesterday? But we'll talk about why that doesn't work for people with dementia, but let's just use that as an example. Say, what did you do this morning? And then that person tells you that they, I don't know, went fishing. Immediately in your head, you've got a fishing story that you want to share, because you went fishing once too, and you caught a really big fish and you want to tell them about it. What you've done there is you've heard what they had to say, and then you've put yourself in front of that conversation. You've made yourself the important person in that conversation. And we all do it. We all do it because we all want to be part of the conversation. When we're talking to somebody with dementia, we need to be thinking about, are we really listening? How can we pull out more about the story, about what they did, about the fishing, rather than then telling them what we did? And then the last thing, and this is the one that many of us really struggle with, and I know that I have done in the past, and that's about pausing and not being afraid of silence. sometimes the best conversations I've had with people with dementia have been when I've been quiet. Can you believe it? I can be quiet. And just sitting and having, you know, a subject in the air, or a prop to look at, or something to look at, a picture maybe, and just being quiet and seeing what comes up for them, rather than trying to rush through conversation. So what I want to do now, as because I like to be interactive, we like to be interactive at Memory Matters, Shania is going to put you all into groups of 3. And this is a bit like speed dating. Okay, so you're in a group of 3, and you're going to have 2 minutes each, basically, to be the person who's going to be listened to. And you're going to have an observer. So you've got 3 people. One will be the observer. And what I want the observer to do, if you've got a pen or pencil or something, is just to write down the sorts of questions that the person who's trying to tease information out of the other person is asking. Now, you're not doing this as if you've got dementia. I just want you to do this as you are, the people in this room who might never have met each other before. 3 people in a room, find out about each other, have a conversation just like you would, you know, down at the supermarket, or, you know, at a networking event. Okay, so all that I want the observer to do is write down the sorts of questions that we tend to ask when we're getting to know somebody. Okay, does that sound all right? I'm going to ask for a thumbs up just so I can get a bit of yes, I can see some thumbs up. Brilliant. Okay, so Shania is going to put you into a breakout room. You don't need to do anything or go anywhere. That by the wonders of technology, you will be pulled into a room with 2 other people. So 2 minutes each. Okay, so if you're the questioner, you're the person who wants to know about somebody, then you have 2 minutes to be that person and to listen to what the other person has to say. And then it's up to you to time keep and swap to the other person to ask questions, and then the third person as well. I hope that makes sense. If you have any problems at all, you can pop back into the main room, and Shania and I will be here, and we can pop round as well and just check that you're doing all right. So you'll be gone for 9 minutes, 6 minutes. Oh, not very good math. And I'll see you back here in 6 minutes. So have fun with it.
Ten seconds.
Oh, Molly's got Wi-Fi issues as well. Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
Oh, gone.
Oh, there you are. It's always a bit hilarious, isn't it, when you're in the middle of a conversation and then you're suddenly pinged back into the big room. Okay, if I could ask you all to put yourselves on mute if you can. Now, what I'd like to do now is I would like to those of you that are brave enough, we're not going to have time for everyone to do this, so I'm just going to ask for 1 or 2 volunteers. If you're brave enough to answer some questions about that activity, then could you digitally raise your hand? So as Shania said, that is, I can't remember how to do it. How do we do that, Shania?
You press the reactions button at the bottom of the screen and then raise hand. So Anna Gret has already done that.
Brilliant. Well, let's talk to Anna Gret. So Anna Gret, if you could take yourself off mute.
Okay, done it.
And I'll see if I can find you. Where are you? Oh no, I can see you. Brilliant. So what I want to know is, when you were observing, what were the sorts of questions that were being asked to start conversations?
So I thought they were quite open questions, really open, like, where is that? How have you been doing? Yeah, very open.
how have you been doing is a really nice question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Are there any more?
There were a couple of closed questions. So there was one that said, so she's managed it, which is,
Okay.
you know, but it felt like a really easy conversation
Yep.
between, well, it was two people that knew each other a little bit anyway.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
brilliant.
Okay.
And just, yeah, just rolled into it.
Fantastic. Okay. Fab. Okay. I'm going to ask Ruth if you've got your hand up, if you can pop yourself off mute so we can hear you, and just give me again some examples of questions that were being asked.
I think because a couple, we were just two of us in a group at first, and then suddenly another two popped in, so it was a little bit difficult to organise that. But I think that at the beginning it was really about finding out what the person's name was, where they were from, and I found the person who was from Scotland, and yeah, and what interested them in doing these sessions and what involvement they had in working with people. So just generally finding out about that person and what mattered to them, what was important to them, and how they were feeling. That was the sort of things we went.
Brilliant. Okay, fab. So what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of getting us to think about how we usually start conversations. So in there, there were some questions that actually would work really well for people living with dementia, but also questions that might not work quite so well. So how are you doing was a great one, because anyone can answer that. But anything that is going to require somebody to use their memory is going to be really tricky. So what I've done is I've put together some questions that I've often seen used for people living with dementia, and done it myself. I'm not saying that I'm perfect, by the way. It is, you almost have to get into the groove in terms of what questions work and what questions don't work. So if Shania, if you could share the slides. I feel like the Prime Minister now. Next slide, please. That's fabulous. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at these fact questions. These are the sorts of questions that we ask each other when we're having a conversation. So we'll just wait for this to load a minute. So, okay, so we're just going to run through a few questions that that we might ask and would be, you know, I guess easy for me or you to answer if we don't have a dementia. So if I can say next slide, please. So here's one. Okay, so where did you grow up? All right, so that is a question that requires memory. So I might know that. Of course, I might know if I've got dementia, I might know where I grew up, but I might not be able to access that information. So if I'm having a conversation, we might find that we're going down a road that's not going to go anywhere, a conversation that's not really going to go anywhere, because actually I've got to make a decision if I don't know the answer to that question as to whether I could lie and I could make something up, or I could admit that I can't remember, and that might bring up some emotions for me because I feel like I should know it. Okay, so next one, please, Shania. So where did you go on holiday last, or where did you last go on holiday? Again, it's an innocent question, isn't it? You know, we're having a chat and I ask, where did you last go on holiday then? Or for most of us, that may have been a really long time ago due to COVID, and we might not remember, but it's a factual question. It's not going to work necessarily for somebody with dementia. Again, it might. It can't blanketly say it won't, but we can say potentially that might not work. What did you do yesterday? Very often, you know, we run groups in the community. It's very common for a common question is, oh, so how did you get here today? Yeah. So again, I'm asking a question that somebody may not be able to answer. So already they're on the back foot. Where did you get that dress? Now here you go. So that often comes after a compliment, doesn't it? Oh, I love your dress. Where did you get it from? Okay, so I can't remember. I don't know. What what did you think about the match last night? Now, no one ever asked me this, but I have noticed we've got Dan in the office, haven't we, Shania, who likes his football and likes his cricket. So again, you know, that's something that is very often a bonding thing for people to talk about. Did you watch the match last night? What did you think about it? Now, obviously, the first part of this question is really good. What did you think about? We're gonna look at this in a minute, but I'm gonna really encourage you to use what did you think, or what do you actually, rather than did, what do you think about is a great starter for somebody with dementia. But we're talking about something very specific, the match last night, which if I've got short-term memory difficulties, I'm going to struggle to know if I watched the match last night. Have you been here before? Yeah. So again, two people meeting in a brand new place, that's a common question, isn't it? Have you been here before? You know, I've certainly asked that at networking events. But again, it may not work. Me and Shania were laughing about this earlier. How do you know Dave? Another one. Say that you're in a place that somebody's hosting. Maybe Dave's the host. So how do you know Dave? Again, if it's a factual question and I can't recount it, it's not going to work. What have you got planned for the weekend? Now, this is an interesting one, isn't it? Because we're not talking about memory. We're not talking about before. We're talking about the future, but we still need our memory, don't we, to know what we've got planned. And I haven't got the picture here, but I've seen this happen many, many times. You know, you're doing a lovely reminiscence activity with somebody living with dementia, and you've got a picture, for example, of John Wayne, and you're holding up, you're saying, you know, what film was this man in? Now, what we're doing is we're trying to encourage conversation, but it's not going to work because, again, we're asking that factual question. They have to remember who that person is and what film they were in. Again, there are some people who might be able to do it, but it's not opening your conversation up, you're closing it down. We're back to how do you know Dave, Shania? So hopefully we've got some, all being well, some alternative conversations. So let's have a look at these instead of those factual questions. So first one, we're going to use the same ones and give you an alternative. So where did you grow up? Instead of where did you grow up, we could ask, where do you like to spend your time? By asking that question, you can use imagination. You can use clues from where you are right now. Perhaps the person's quite happy where they are. Well, I like it here. You know, we can come up with some good answers to that question without having to delve into our memory bank. Where did you go on holiday last? Instead of that, what sorts of holidays do you enjoy? Straight away. So what this does, of course, is it means that those that could have answered the original question can still answer it. It's the same. So if somebody really struggles with their memory, when we ask a question like this, it's much more inclusive to everybody in the room, because actually everybody can answer this question, other than not just the people who can remember the answer. So if I ask, what sort of holiday do you enjoy? If I know what my last holiday was, I might bring that in and say, oh, I went to the Seychelles last year. And instead of where did you grow up? Oi.
It was the wrong one.
Oh, okay. So instead of what did you do yesterday? How do you like to spend your time? Again, no requirement there of memory. We can use imagination.
Sorry, Laura, I don't know where my little cursor's gone.
That's all right, Shania. This is why I asked you. Exactly.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
Hang on a minute. Moving on.
Swiftly on.
There you go.
It's the dress question again. Where did you get that dress? Well, I love the color of your dress. And this is a great one. I use this one a lot. What colors do you think would suit me? So, okay, yes, it's a little bit selfish. I'm bringing the conversation back to me, but actually I'm asking the person their advice. And when we ask somebody their advice, then that helps with their self-esteem and their self-worth. So by saying, I love your dress. Yeah, I love the colors in your dress. What do you think? Do you think that color would work for me? It's a great way of bonding. Now I'm going to ask you some questions. Look, so that one about what did you think about the last night's match? So in the comments section, I want you to come up with an alternative question that you could ask somebody living with dementia. And it might be football based. Do you like football? Brilliant. Do you enjoy watching football? Mm-hmm. Do you like sports? Which sports do you enjoy? Yeah. Do you have a favorite sport? You've got it. Yeah. Do you support a team? Yeah, I mean, do you support a team? Might be a little bit tricky if they can't remember, but they might remember. That's the thing, isn't it? Do you like watching sport? Yeah, these are all great. Okay, let's go on to the next one. We'll try you with another one. Have you been here before? So that same scenario, imagine you're somewhere new. And instead of asking this question, what could you ask? Do you like it here? Love it. Yeah. A couple of people said the same. Do you like it here? It's a great one because you're asking their opinion. It's lovely to see. Well, I like that. It's lovely to see you. Do you feel comfortable here? Brilliant. How are you feeling being here today? Nice. Do you think you will like it here? Brilliant. Because actually that's cueing somebody into knowing that they've not been there for long too. So you're even giving them extra information. It's good. Yeah. Do you like it here? Okay, let's go for the next one, Shania. What's the next one on there? How do you know Dave? What could we say instead? Oh, tricky one, this. Who's Dave? Dave gets around. He does get around, yeah. Do you know anyone here? Brilliant. Dave seems like a very nice person. I love that. And particularly if we point Dave out as well. So again, we're giving the person as much information as we can. Dave seems like a top bloke, doesn't he? Lovely. It's a leading question, though. It might not be. Dave's a funny guy. Do you know Dave? Would you like to meet Dave? Great. Okay, so yeah, the question, do you know Dave? Maybe they wouldn't know the answer to that, but yeah, would you like to meet Dave? That's great. Well done, this is great. I like Dave's shirt. Do you like it? Yeah, lovely. Love it. So yeah, the sort of bringing out what you can see and commenting on what you can see around you, it really is key when talking to people with dementia. What's next, Shania? It feels like a mystery to me because I can't remember. What have you got planned for the weekend? Okay, let's have one more in the chat. What would you say instead of what have you got planned for the weekend? What do you enjoy doing? Brilliant. What would you like to do this weekend? See, just changing it very slightly and suddenly it's an accessible conversation. What do you like to do? Well, I hope the weather will be good for the weekend. Yeah, so that's it, sort of an observation. Yeah. Which can start a discussion. We like the weather, don't we? Okay, Shania, if you can kind of skip on if there's any more like that, because I think we need to, I'm just looking at time. I'm wondering if we can just have a look at closed questions. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about closed question, because it's quite easy again to get into these closed questions without realizing we're doing it. And some of the questions that we've come up with today have been closed questions. Now, normally, again, if we have a healthy brain, then we can very easily have those closed questions that will create conversation. But for somebody with dementia, they may not be able to take that conversation further from a closed question. So as an example, are you watching the tennis? For you and me may result in a conversation around, oh yes, I have been, I was watching such and such play last night, and we're having a conversation. But this could be a very closed question. It could be the answer's yes or no, or if they've not even been aware that the tennis is on, just feeling like, I can't really go anywhere with this conversation. The answer, I guess, is going to be no there. So here's an alternative. If you had to choose between watching tennis or watching football, what would you choose? Okay, so it's still a bit of a closed question, isn't it? Because we've given them two answers, football or tennis. But actually, this works really well when we give people a choice. This or this, okay? And then they give you the answer, football, okay. And which one would you rather play? If you were actually playing, would you rather play football or tennis? Yeah, so actually giving those alternative answers, and we're giving them the answers, we're making it multiple choice. This is another one. Have you ever been to the Lake District? Now, these sorts of conversations come out of other conversations, don't they? So if we're in a group scenario and somebody's come back from the Lake District and they've got some photographs to share, and then you say to the person next to you, Betty, have you ever been to the Lake District? And again, where can that conversation go? It's a really tricky one. If Betty can't remember whether she's been to the Lake District, she'll probably just say no. And then we're down this path that doesn't go anywhere. So I think we've got an alternative. Yeah, so if we're talking about holidays, we could say, do you prefer a lazy holiday or an action-packed holiday? Again, those choices. What would you do is the next question. If they said, oh, I'd like a lazy holiday. What would you do? Would you read books? Where would be the perfect place to go? So again, we're not talking about the past. We're just talking about right now. How do you feel? What would you like to do? So I think we might need to skip on a little bit, Shania, because we need to do Q&A. So obviously, because I can't see the slides, I'm going to have to trust you to take me to. Can we have that one about the child with the prop, with the spinning top? Just finally, so because this is the other thing, is using props is absolutely brilliant when we're working with people with dementia. So instead of do you remember these? Which again, this is how we would talk to each other. Oh, do you remember having one of these? That's a natural way for us to talk. But we can change the way that we talk to make it more accessible by saying, look, have a look at this, give it to the person and see what happens. Do they start pumping it? Do they start making it work? Be really curious about what happens next. Remember, conversation isn't all about talking. Our communication can be about actions and about body language and the use of props, and that can be just as it is sometimes even more beneficial. I think there's a final quote at the end, Shania, which I'll just mention. Probably the last slide. We'll send you these slides as well, so any ones that we haven't gone over, you can have. So the friends who listen to us are the ones we moved towards. When we're listened to, it creates it creates us, makes us unfold and expand. And isn't that what we want to do? If you're working with people living with dementia, or if you love somebody living with dementia, that's what you want. We want people to feel good. We want them to thrive. And that means us giving ourselves to the conversation and really, really listening. Okay, so if we can go back to the main screen so I can see everyone. And I just want to speak very, very quickly because it's 10:02, so I'm just going to speak quickly about activity ideas that we can use. Now, using props is fabulous. And I would always say, if you've got a picture to look at, if you've got something to hold, and if you can bring in the senses, we know that the brain works better when we bring in all of the senses. So being able to smell something, taste something, touch something, all of that is really helpful. And having props as the main point of the conversation can take you in so many different directions. What I want to say is that when we're doing activities, it's really important to be a bit vulnerable. So the best activities that I've ever done are ones that I've never done before. The best activities are the ones where I say, do you know what, I've never done this before, so help, me and you, let's see if we can do this. Because then we're sitting beside the person and we're working it out together. And again, when we talk about increasing self-esteem and self-worth, that's what we can do and that's what we can give. And to do that, we have to not be afraid to be a little bit vulnerable and to get it wrong. And that's all part of it, isn't it? And I always, when I'm doing groups, because I'm terrible at maths and not really that great at spelling either. And that's great, isn't it? If I can't spell a word on the flip chart and somebody can correct me, that's fabulous. That makes me feel good that somebody's able to do that. And that's not just me pretending I can't do it, because that's not being genuine. This is about being completely authentic about the things that we're not so good at, and allowing people to see that, so that they can sit beside us and feel able to show their vulnerability too. So I think it's really important that we really share ourselves. And we say at Memory Matters, when we're recruiting people at Memory Matters, we're always looking for people who will come to work as their whole selves and bring their whole selves to work. I know that when I did my mental health nurse training, there was a lot around, oh, you've got to have your boundaries. And of course you do. We do have to have our boundaries. But we also have to be ourselves, because at the end of the day, it's us. We're the tool, if you like, that we're taking to work. So when it comes to activities, I really think it's great when we can learn together and try something new together. It might be that you're constructing something out of, I don't know, bits of paper or card or rubber, and you've never done it before. You haven't even prepped it. You haven't done it before to know what it's going to look like. I love that. Let's not have a look and think about the end result. So it's not, we're going to make a big paper flower today and it's going to look like this because this is how I prepared it and this is what I want it to look like. But actually, we've got all of this stuff and we're going to make something. What should we make? Yeah, and not being afraid to try things out and to get it wrong, because we can always have a cup of tea and a piece of cake if it didn't work out, can't we? It doesn't really matter. Use your imagination. So helping people to use their imagination is so important. Let's not all the time be thinking about reminiscence work. Reminiscence work's great, but there's so much more that we can do in terms of imagination and using people's imagination, looking at pictures and art and asking people what they think of it. What does it make them feel like? When they look at it, what comes to mind? Those sorts of conversations are so important. We don't need to be rigid and think we're going to do this today and by the end of it we will have completed something. Throw that out. We don't need to do that when we're working with people with dementia. So because I'm conscious of time and we've got 5 minutes left, I want to open the floor to questions. And the first question that I want to ask you is kind of, what's your biggest challenge, I guess? What's your biggest challenge when it comes to providing activity or having conversations with people with dementia? That's my question. Feel free to put your hand up. and I'll come to you. But just to let you know that because of time, I would like to take what you tell me and maybe do another session on that. So be thinking about that when you answer. So what's your biggest challenge? And I don't know, and just what's your biggest challenge?
Liz has got her hand up, Laura.
Liz?
Hello. Can
Hello.
you hear me? Can you hear
I
me?
can-
It's-
oh, I
it's
can
not
see
always
you
very
as well
loud,
then.
apparently. I wanted to say that I think my biggest challenge is in the sessions. I find it quite a tension to marry up the time I'm trying to give to really listen and be present to the people in the group. But I'm also aware of the tension of time to get through all the activities, like the orientation board, you know, the bit of the news, then the main activity. And you're trying to listen to people. Like there was an instance this last week when we were doing something about surnames and families. And one of the guys, who's really sweet, started off on some reminiscing about when they'd all gone to Centre Parks or whatever. And I was very aware that we hadn't done the song and we hadn't got to that bit yet. So I said to him, actually, oh, Russell, it's really great that you're sharing that. I'd really love to hear about that. But can we just leave it for just a little while and then we'll come back to it later on? But that's my biggest challenge. I find that sometimes I feel I have to slightly cut people off a bit because otherwise we would never get through what we've got to get through. And my volunteers are able to perhaps listen to them a bit more because they're not the one facilitating it. I don't know if other people find that a problem, but I just feel sometimes it's very hard to give them time to be present for them.
So Liz, because you're talking about running cognitive stimulation therapy sessions, aren't you, by the book, you know, so essentially an hour session, you've got your orientation board, you've got your song, you know, you've got all of those aspects that you've got to get through. And you're absolutely right. You have to, there's an element of timekeeping within that hour that you have to do to move the session on. And that's how that treatment works. And I think you're absolutely right to say, you know, I really want to hear your story, and make sure that you make eye contact at that point. I really want to hear this story. At the moment, we're going to just push on because we need to get through the session, but I'm going to come back to you, and you must make sure that you do. So when the session is over, that you come back, and you will have to have you because that's the problem, isn't it? When you're working with someone with dementia, you have to make sure that you have the information. So you can't just go back and say, you know what you were saying earlier, tell me about it now. You'll have to bring the prompts back for him to get him back to that place. So I think, you know, that's, I suppose, one of the downsides, and there are not very many, to cognitive stimulation therapy, just because if you're providing it in that hour session as it is by the book, then there will be moments like that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I've got time, I guess. Well, actually, I've not got time. For those of you that can stay for a bit, I have time for another question. But before I do, because I know I'm conscious that some of you will just need to leave right now, that we have a few things that I want to tell you about. One of them, well, actually, Facebook groups are completely free, and you can join them. If you're loving someone living with dementia, look us up. It's called Loving Someone Living with Dementia, and it's a Facebook group that supports people living with dementia. If you work with people living with dementia, you might want to tell them about it too, and you might want to join. I would be absolutely delighted if some of you would like to join that group as well, to help support people who are loving somebody living with dementia. So Shania's just popped that in the chat now. So that's that group. Just to let you know, you can save the chat as well somehow. Shania might tell me how in a minute.
You press the three little dots on the corner of the chat, and it should say save.
I love you, Shania. And then, so those are the one Facebook group is that one. The second Facebook group is our Cognitive Stimulation Therapy Facilitators Facebook group, which is very lively in there and full of people who provide cognitive stimulation therapy for people living with dementia, which Shania's popped in as well. We've also got Exploring Dementia training, which you can access through our website. So if you want to know more about how to have conversations, that's the place to get it. We also do CST training, which I think will go in the chat as well. And finally, we also provide fellowship training, which helps people who want to provide groups in their community for people living with dementia, and we will help you to set up your own business or social enterprise to do that. So that's our fellowship. Thank you, Shania, for putting that in. And don't worry, you don't have to apologise that you're leaving, because it's me that's gone over time, and I do apologise. But I would like to take one more question for those that can stay around your challenges, because I'd like to hear another challenge if you have one. Don't worry if you don't. Oh, Judith.
Yes, I volunteer, and in the group we have a couple of people who are non-verbal, and my approach, and I'm not sure if this is the correct one, is basically to chat, not exactly at them, but I just burble away so that they don't have to talk back to me, because, you know, they can't. And as long as it seems to work, as long as I keep off anything that might cause stress or distress, you know. So I just burble on about yeah, politicians are getting worse, you know, depending on who it is.
Right.
And yeah, isn't it a lovely day, that kind of thing. It's great to see you again. But it sounds like there are some things I could maybe be asking that would make them feel more involved than me just talking at them, even though they can't respond to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing to remember is, although the person is unable to communicate verbally to you, they will be able to communicate with you in other ways. So for some people, get quite rhythmical. So you might find that they tap, like constantly tapping. And so actually we can use that as a way to communicate by tapping back. I used to work with a lady who couldn't speak, and I used to have a little drum. I used to get her to tap on it, and we would do a recall and response. So she would tap, I would tap, or sometimes I would tap just to see what would happen, and she would tap the same rhythm back. So just to let you know that it's not all about conversation. There's a lot of non-verbal stuff that we can do where we can really feel connected. And from my point of view, Judith, it's just about making sure that you're getting really good eye contact. And you know, when I was saying about listening, so listening to non-verbals as well, we can do that just by sitting in silence and watching and seeing, you know, are there smiles, are their lips turning up in the corners, are there little smiles, or is there sadness? And the other thing is to use music. I mean, music is absolutely fantastic for people who are unable to talk, and singing along. And you might find that even people who are not able to talk anymore can sing, and often can know all the words to songs as well. So that would be another suggestion. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, thank you very much.
Good. Okay. Is it married? Apologies if I'm saying it wrong, but I did notice your hand went up a couple of times. Have we got time to come to you?
Yeah, it's Mairead. Same as Judith. So thank you for the non-verbal advice. Brilliant.
Brilliant. Okay. Yeah, no worries. Okay, so fantastic. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming along today. That hour's gone really, really fast. And you know where we are. We told you where to find us. You know, do join those Facebook groups if you would like to, and you can always reach out to us. And Shania, I wonder whether putting your email address in the chat might be a good idea. So if anybody's got any other questions that we haven't had time for today, please let Shania know, because we love doing these workshops, and we've got it right for this one. We seem to have got the right title, and you guys have wanted to come along, and we're really happy to do free workshops every 4 to 6 weeks, and we're at your beck and call. You tell us what you want to know and we'll come and teach it. So lovely. Thank you, everybody, for coming. It's lovely to see all your faces. I'll wave my blue hands now. Jazz hands. Bye-bye.